Well, some may have mixed feelings about who came out on top today, Trump or Comey, but political commentator and author David Frum is not one of them. David joins me now from Washington. David, I was reading your piece in The Atlantic that you wrote this afternoon. You start with, "It was a bad, bad day for Team Trump." How so?
Team Trump has a number of explanations of why the Comey testimony is not damaging, and 5 that I itemized in the article, and one by one they are pierced. Here's how bad, though, it was. Donald Trump has a lawyer. He went through four major law firms, turned him down because he doesn't pay his bills. So he's now his 5th choice of lawyer. His lawyer is an effective commercial litigator, but someone new to the ways of Washington. And he put out a statement immediately after the hearing in which he said that Comey had betrayed privileged conversations between the president and the FBI director. Well, that is a remark that suggests no idea of how the principle of executive privilege works. And in particular that, as was established during Watergate, that executive privilege does not cover if the president has said things that might point toward a crime. Comey today, in his testimony, was convincing, he was credible, and he was consistent. And he also revealed something that we did not know, which is that the Attorney General had 3, not 2, as was previously assumed, undisclosed meetings with the Russian ambassador about which the Attorney General did not tell the truth.
Well, I want to pick up because you're mentioning the president's lawyer, Mark Kasowitz. I mean, he came out with a statement, essentially said, well, he said that the president was vindicated in his words, and in essence called Comey a liar and a leaker. Let's listen to a little more what Mark Kasowitz had to say.
From before this president took office to this day, it is overwhelmingly clear that there have been and continue to be those in government who are actively attempting to undermine this administration with selective and illegal leaks of classified information and privileged communications. Mr. Comey has now admitted that he is one of these leakers.
So in essence, it seems to be that Team Trump wants to put Comey in with this sort of deep state idea that they have, that they claim to be operating against the president. Do you think this is going to be an effective strategy?
So that's gibberish. I mean, it sounds like legalese, but it's gibberish. To anyone who actually knows anything about how the law works, that's just gibberish. It makes no sense. Look, here's the core of the Trump defense. That they say, the president asked Director Comey in January, am I the target of an investigation? Now, at that point, the FBI is investigating a massive espionage attack on the United States. It's already amazing that the president-elect of the United States would say, by the way, when you're looking for spies, am I a spy? And Comey was able to assure him at that point that, Mr. President-elect, you personally are not a target of this espionage investigation, just your campaign. That's all. And the Trump people say, well, that's our vindication. They were only looking for espionage in our campaign, not the president-elect himself, and therefore we are vindicated. For the director then to talk about these conversations after the president tweeted them, after the president said he had taped them, after the president said, I am not invoking executive privilege at these hearings, for the president's lawyer to say the director to talk about his own notes and his own experience is illegal or subject to privilege, as I say, it's gibberish. It just doesn't make any sense. It's law talk. It's not law.
Well, it's interesting because Comey seemed to anticipate that the attacks would come about his credibility, and he mentioned this in a question in the back and forth in the hearing today. Let's take a listen to something Comey had to say for himself.
I think people should look at the whole body of my testimony, because as I used to say to juries, that when I talked about a witness, you can't cherry pick it. You can't say, I like these things he said, but on this, he's a dirty, rotten liar. Right. You got to take it all together, and I've tried to be open and fair and transparent and accurate. A really significant fact to me is, so why did he kick everybody out of the Oval Office?
Do you think that there's any traction to be made here trying to attack Comey's credibility after his appearance today?
Zero. Look, if you go onto YouTube, there are dozens of hours of video of people do this for sport, of saying, Donald Trump saying, I never said X, and then there'll be a clip immediately after of Donald Trump saying X. That Donald Trump, both the polls suggest and the objective reality suggest, is the least credible occupant of the Oval Office, certainly in modern times, maybe ever. Not everyone loves James Comey. He is a person of sometimes kind of overbearing rectitude, and he has made some enemies along the way. But if James Comey says a fact, he doesn't lie about that. There are people who have problems with some of his demeanor, but he is a truthful person, and Donald Trump just is not. A former deputy mayor of New York who worked with Trump before Trump ever entered politics famously said, "I wouldn't believe Donald Trump if his tongue were notarized."
Well, the key, I guess one of the big unanswered questions, or people were hoping to get a little bit more insight on, was this whole idea of whether there was obstruction of justice. Right. Let's take a look to a little bit of the exchange and what Comey had to say about that.
When a president of the United States in the Oval Office says something like, "I hope," or "I suggest," or "would you," do you take that as a directive?
Yes.
And this is on this issue of hope. Was he instructed, or is hope just a mild suggestion? You know, there was a question that some have said there was no smoking gun today in his testimony. I know you have an opinion on that.
Well, there is no smoking gun, but there is a warm weapon with a discharge chamber, some casings on the floor, and bullet holes in the walls. So we have to do the inference. Look, when the president says, "I hope X will happen," maybe that's just a wish. But when X doesn't happen and he fires the person to whom he expressed the hope, then it does begin to look at like an after-the-fact order, that he was insisting that the investigation into Michael Flynn be stopped, and he punished Comey for not doing it. Now, here's a weird thing about Donald Trump, and this is the thing really to think about. Donald Trump is not loyal to his own people. Paul Manafort, his campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, another of his campaign managers, one after another, he has cheerfully thrown over the side people who trusted him. And yet Michael Flynn, of all the people, is the one person who has this incredible hold on the president. Maybe there's some special bond between the two, but maybe there's something else. And that is the thing that all eyes are watching. You asked about obstruction of justice. That's a technical legal term, and there are some standards for it, and we'll be debating on TV a lot whether this technical standards for obstruction of justice have been met. But that the president was obstructing justice in the plain English sense of that term that may not be prosecutable, that's obvious. Whether there's a prosecutable crime, that's what we'll debate.
Yes, and that debate will carry on. David, great to talk to you tonight. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.